Good evening, Arfon Jones of VID-O-RAMA here, the channel where we remember the VHS releases of the past in graphic detail. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of Mr. John H. Shelton, who requested that I say a few words to accompany his review of the Romero Dead series. I myself am a fan, particularly of the first three, and also the remake of Night of the Living Dead, I might add. I think what I like about this series the most is the fact that because they were released each decade, I think they're wonderful representatives of the horror franchise at that time. The first movie is great. It represents horror movies of the 60s. 70s, much the same. We see a change in style. Good fun. The third one, again, is 80s. It's over the top. It is wonderful. So, as they keep going, I think they're a wonderful way of just time capsules, showing us what trends and what people liked at that particular time. It changed everything. I still hold that first one in high regard because the way it sets the tension and that ending is just... Anyway, John will tell you a lot more about this, so I will hand it back to him. Thank you very much, and good night.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Now, who hasn't seen this next film? The film is George A. Romero's 1968 black and white cult horror classic, Night of the Living Dead. You'll find that this film came out on all kinds of labels, with it being not only just an independent film, is that it went copyright free, I believe, and the copyright wasn't put on the film, on the logo. Hence, many companies picked it up over the years and released it under different labels. One of the ones I've got here, which is from Metrodome. Collector's edition includes an all-new interview with George A. Romero on his seminal horror classic. Still got to look at this one yet, but this one's, as I said, by Metrodome. It's uncut, I believe. This came out in 2007. And of course the film stars Dwayne Jones, Judith O'Dea, Cole Haldeman, and of course the story revolves around Barbara and Johnny, who go to the graveyard and put a wreath on their mother's grave, and basically they're attacked by Bill Heisman, the zombie, the first zombie you see in the film, to the late Bill Heisman, and Johnny is attacked and Barbara needs to get away, and she meets up with Ben at a farmhouse, the lead black actor in this, and basically survival ensues where there are other survivors in the basement, Harry Cooper and his bitten daughter, his wife, and two other young and another young couple, and they're trying to survive the night, and they're boarding up the house, trying to keep the zombies out, arguing which is safer, staying upstairs or going downstairs in the basement. It's a very well done independent film, horror film. It is a classic, and I still think obviously the film that came after it was Dawn of the Dead, which is superior, as a lot of people say, but it's still Night of the Living Dead. You gotta respect it. Night of the Living Dead also came out in a colour version. Not many fans like this because the zombies were tinted green, and people found kind of dislike that, but I've got this version anyway from the B-Movie DVD Classic collection from Boulevard Entertainment. It was nice and cheap, so I picked it up just to say that I've got the colour version. It's strange really, because this says it's an 18 and then this one's a 15, maybe because it has got tamer over the years. But Night of the Living Dead, when I first saw it when I was a kid, it made me didn't want to sleep near the window in fear of zombies' arms popping in and trying to get you. And I remember watching it around my auntie's place, and she had like an old people's home where she'd look after people, and just the smell of the place, and having dark rooms, and it was just that whole atmosphere, and staying up and watching horror films on video, VHS. Great days, really. Good times. I would just point out that this contains no extra features. I don't think there's anything on there whatsoever. Just the disc and it in colour, basically. They keep going back in a bloodthirsty lust for human flesh. The Ultimate Edition, the Millennium Edition, is what fans really go for. And this disc here, it's double-sided. They're quite annoying, double-sided discs are. But you have to be extra careful so you don't scratch them or anything like that. But I picked this up, I think I've still got the receipt for it. I picked this up in about 1999, I believe. No, 2000, sorry, around about that time anyway. And it's a special collector's edition, digital THX mastered, for superior sound and picture quality from Elite Entertainment. And on this you get special features, a THX approved transfer from the original negative, theatrical trailer and television spot, Night of the Living Dead, a short film parody which is infamous, original commercials by Image 10 Incorporated that George Romero worked on, 2 full running commentaries allowing you to listen to the cast and crew comment on the film. And on one side you've got like the producers, as well as the director George Romero and John Russo, who helped produce it. And on the other side you've got commentary from the actors like Bill Heinzman. And it's in a 1.33.1 NTSC unrated, black and white, but it is basically region 0 and it's an 18. The other versions are, doesn't really say, just audio English, doesn't say what format they're in. I can't remember exactly what format they're in, but this one's region 0, this one's region 2. But this is the version that you should pick up. You can find it on Amazon. It's the Millennium version. And if you don't know the story of Night of the Living Dead or how it ends or anything like that, then you're missing out on a great film there. On a classic, basically. And basically the whole house is getting overrun by zombies. And without giving away the end, it ends on quite a bleak end. And the acting from the lead actor Dwayne Jones, I always thought was really good in this film. Despite some of the cast being a little bit hokey at times, he really held this film together. And George Romero using a black actor wasn't a statement or anything like that. It was just the fact that he was a good actor, and they used him to Dwayne Jones because of his acting skills and obviously some kind of really good presence on camera. But Night of the Living Dead, you can't go too far wrong. Following this was George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead in 1978 that came out. It was around about the time where he teamed up with Dario Argento to help get the film edited and out there. But Night of the Living Dead, Millennium Edition. I'll especially shout this out for the Mr. Safe and Secure one as well, because this is the version that everybody raves about and maybe should look into picking it up one day. I hope you do, and that you probably might already have a few copies of this film yourself. But Night of the Living Dead, Can't go wrong. Horror classic. Following Night of the Living Dead from 1968 came George A. Romero's epic zombie flick Dawn of the Dead from 1978. This is pretty much the penultimate zombie film. It was made in the 70s, as you might have gathered, and it's a great film, no fault in it. Some newer fans might be more familiar with the remake of Dawn of the Dead, which came in 2004, I believe, from Zack Snyder, was it? But George A. Romero's 1978 Dawn of the Dead was basically funded by Dario Argento, the Italian filmmaker who does horror, and he ended up doing his own cut and helped his own production of the film in other markets. There's been a few versions of Dawn of the Dead. It's one of the films that was originally cut up due to violence and gore and zombie madness, basically. But basically the story follows Fran, Peter, Flyboy and Roger as they start off, basically, some of the characters at a newsroom, and they have to find ways to escape, basically, and they end up getting a helicopter and they end up refueling where a bunch of rednecks are taking out zombies left, right and centre. But eventually, about half hour into the film, maybe a bit less than that actually, they end up taking shelter in a mall, in a giant mall. And filming in this place must have been absolutely chaotic, as I'm not the one who pointed this out, but it was James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. He pointed out that, you know, if they were filming overnight in the shopping mall itself, then there must have been bits of like zombie gore left over that wasn't cleaned up, and wondered what the shoppers might think in the next morning. It's a great film. Sometimes it doesn't seem like 2.5 hours or whatever the running time is on these different versions, but the version I've got here is from BMG. It's basically got the special features on this one, exclusive commentary from Tom Savini, a scene selection and stills gallery, and animated menus with all blood pouring out of gunshots. There isn't loads of extra features on there, but there has been that massive box set, the ultimate version of this, that has come out. Maybe I should pick it up one day. And on my channel before, I've shown you the trilogy of the Dead by George A. Romero, which features a few. Well, it features, for starters off, it doesn't feature the original Night of the Living Dead. It features the 30th anniversary version, which I haven't mentioned yet, I don't think. Well, not in my last review of Night of the Living Dead, that it contains the 30th anniversary version, which is basically re-edited footage to try and get the copyright back to the film, and basically they ballsed up the old film. So please try and avoid the 30th anniversary version of Night of the Living Dead. But back to Dawn of the Dead. Great colourful film, comic book, like colourful blood. I think that's what George A. Romero was aiming for. And because of that, we also get loads of special effects by Tom Savini, with zombies' heads being blown off, decapitated, and screwdrivers in the head, and zombie bites, and loads of great stuff, basically. Sorry about the glare, I hope that didn't pull out of focus. But anyway, back to the review. The shopping mall ends up getting taken over by the 4 survivors as they reclaim it. but on a radio frequency they pick up some bikers who are led by Tom Savini, the special effects guy, who end up wanting the shopping mall for themselves, so they end up breaking in, and more chaos ensues, and there's a bit of a war between the two rival gangs of people who are trying to survive and basically try to reclaim the shopping mall in all greediness. There was an alternative end to this film as well, where because they've got the helicopter on top of the shopping mall itself, there was a scene where Fran commits suicide. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure what happened to Peter, but she ends up committing suicide, or I think Peter does end up committing suicide, and she ends up doing the same herself. And basically what happens is she puts her head into the blades of the helicopter and ends up getting decapitated, but apparently the effect didn't work so well, so that ending was scrapped. And so it is a bit more of a positive ending, with some of the characters getting away, but I won't say which ones if you haven't seen this film. But who hasn't seen Dawn of the Dead? Such a zombie classic. I'll show you the back there. Here's a Marine zombie here, this bold one here. You can see him on the front there. I think in most of George A. Romero's zombie films, I think he tries to convey a message throughout all of them, and basically he was saying that basically people walking around in the shopping malls are zombies, who are just consuming the products, and you could say that about today's society as well. You know, with iPhones and people wanting to buy products, especially around Christmas time and all that nonsense. And you could say that people are the real zombies at the end of the day, and in the film the zombies are just there. The music was done by Goblin, the European band, and recently they've started a tour of America. And I thought what was really cool, this is the first time they've been to America, and without digressing too much, I've seen some of their pictures on Facebook where they've met with singer Mike Patton, who must be an obvious Goblin fan, and he's a film buff himself, so he must love films like this himself, and because he also does soundtracks, has done soundtracks in the past on Crank 2. This runs at 139 minutes approximately, so it's just over 2 hours long. There's the different versions of this film as well, which there's a Dario Argento cut. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, or how many there actually is, but with Dawn of the Dead, it's a classic. You can't go wrong. And the remake that came in 2004 basically takes the basic concept of them being in another shopping mall, and with more fancier zombie effects and some CGI in there, but this was obviously all pre-CGI, where everything had to be practical, and for the budget it was done on, it was really good, and it was good for Dario Argento to put up the money for George Romero to get his film made in the first place. And it says it's a director's cut, and there are actually, I did notice that a few things were cut from this, to be honest. I think the children scene where Peter ends up gunning down a couple of zombie children, and some of the bites in the towards the beginning, where the zombies are attacking the apartments. Some of those scenes seem to be cut down a bit as well. But if you ask Mr. Safe and Secure one on air, I'm sure he could be able to recommend a a good version of Dawn of the Dead to watch, because he's got quite a collection of George A. Romero films himself. So get in contact with him and also subscribe to him, and also happy birthday to him as well. And Dawn of the Dead. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. Day of the Dead was George A. Romero's third in the Dead series. This didn't come out until 1985, about 7 years after Dawn of the Dead, and this one's set in the 80s, and is a lot more gorier, and it's a splatter fest, especially towards the end. It came out on VHS in the 80s as well. Here's the big box edition of it, with a really cool cover with all the zombie heads by Tom Savini, who returned to do the special effects along with K&B Studios, Greg Nicotero, as you know, of The Walking Dead. And this one was intended to be a Gone with the Wind of zombie movies, but a budget was cut, and hence the result was a little bit different to what George Romero was expecting, and to maybe what critics were expecting at the time as well, because they really did pan this film. But in time it has become a cult classic, and especially known for its music score by John Harrison, and that's elsewhere on YouTube if you want to look it up. But Day of the Dead basically takes it a bit further. It's a bit more darker than the previous installments, and it starts off with survivors, and I think it's Pennsylvania, or that's where the other ones were filmed, I think, as well as Pittsburgh. And basically we end up going underground to a military base where scientists are trying to figure out how to cure the zombie disease, and all above has been overrun by the living dead, as it shows at the beginning of this film. The lead actress in this is, what's her name again, Laurie Cordile. She plays Sarah, and she's the main protagonist in this. And George A. Romero gives her quite a strong role, and she's battling against the forces of the army, led by Captain Rhodes, who's basically being a bastard towards everyone, and he wants to see results from the scientists and from the other survivors down below, and if nobody's pulling their weight, then basically he's gonna oust him from the group and send him off to get fed by the zombies, because he's basically, in his opinion, he's wasting his time trying to get hold of these zombies for experiments, and all they're doing is twiddling their thumbs, and he's getting really anxious about this, and he's getting really angry about it as well. Captain Rhodes is probably an infamous horror villain who does meet his demise in a very gory way towards the end of this film. There's a bit much to the story apart from it's another struggle. It's about surviving again, and dealing with the dramas of the clashes and the tensions between them. And there's a lot of bad language in this. There's the zombie gore effects, which have been improved by Tom Savini. It's more gross looking. The makeup effects on the zombies are a lot more dead looking. As I said before, Greg Nicotero and K&B, they help out as assistants on this before they went on to do Evil Dead 2. And there's also a lovable zombie called Bob in this, who you can see right here. Bob is basically got a trainer called Dr. Frankenstein, and he's teaching him things to do humane things, and Captain Rose doesn't like this, and he's getting angry with it all the time. There's a better picture of Bob there, if you can see him. And basically, all Captain Rose wants to do is blow the living snot out of all these walkers and dead zombies and undead beings. It's an 18, sorry, and it lives up to the hype of being at 18 because it is a very gory film. Day of the Dead kind of got a reimagining in 2008 with Steve Miner. He did a version of Day of the Dead, like a modern redo on it, and that didn't go down very well with critics of the original series. There was a Day of the Dead 2, which wasn't an official sequel, and I don't think George Romero was happy about that. And basically these spin-off sequels aren't that good if you're a fan of the original. But there's also been talk about another remake of Day of the Dead from the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, which came out earlier this year. They're supposed to be doing another remake of Day of the Dead, which is due out in the next year or so. And they're really milking it, and they are really milking all these sequels and everything about them. The DVD, the version I've got here, is in widescreen. It's got subtitles, chapter selection, behind the scenes footage, horror trailers, biographies and filmographies, photo gallery. But I didn't mention this before in my last review of Dawn of the Dead, but you should really go for the Arrow video releases of these because these are really special. The version I've got here came out in about 2000, and what I also managed to pick up on ISO Hunt, was a behind the scenes 4-hour 2-disc version of Day of the Dead, which has got footage from Tom Savini filming all kinds of behind the scenes special effects and stuff which he didn't want really to be out there. But if you look it up on YouTube, behind the scenes making of Day of the Dead, you can find it on YouTube. Like I said, you should really go for the Arrow video version because that's the version that is pretty much the penultimate version. It's been released, a special edition has been released in the States as well, on a different label. But in the UK, if you check out the Arrow video version, then you're going to get a really good version of the film, and it probably is going to get discontinued as well because it is in its special. It is a very special edition, as well as the special edition of Dawn of the Dead as well, which you should always check out. Day of the Dead, like I said, critics kind of panned it. The darkest day of horror the world has ever known. It basically did get panned by critics in the day, and has found a big cult following in modern times. And this was another film that my dad introduced me to, like Dawn of the Dead. And we used to watch these from the video shop, and basically get to know what zombies are all about. And George A. Romero, he's the master, he's the king basically. George A. Romero went on to do Land of the Dead after this about 19 years later in the 2000s, as well as Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead. But they're different films altogether, they are. There's been a soundtrack that has been re-released for this as well, Day of the Dead, by John Harrison, on a limited edition. And it's been, in the meantime, it's been a very hard soundtrack to get hold of as well. But Day of the Dead, Bub the Zombie, Captain Rhodes, memorable characters, gory effects by Tom Savini. You can't go too far wrong. It sets up the trilogy for the first 3 Dead films basically. From 1985, Day of the Dead. Land of the Dead was George A. Romero's fourth Dead film, and this time around, this one came out in 2005. It had a higher budget and was from a major studio, from Universal Studios, but filmed in Canada. And basically the original title was Dead Reckoning, and Dead Reckoning got changed to Land of the Dead, maybe because to Hollywood up it up a bit, and maybe to have people know it was a sequel to films like Dawn of the Dead. Now this one is kind of set a bit more into the future, and starts off with a story of with like a bit of dialogue at the beginning saying that what zombies are about, and if they bite you, you know, you come back as a zombie. You die, you come back as a zombie. So basically human mankind is basically fucked at this point. And it's set at a place called Fiddler's Green, and surrounding that, let me get this right, there's like a shanty town where people are, and basically Dennis Hopper, who stars in this, is like the puppet master who looks out and all this. He plays a guy called Kaufman, maybe after Lloyd Kaufman, who knows. And he looks out, he's got the money basically, and he looks out on the city, and he's in control basically. Like I said, he's got the money, he's got the power, he owns the weapons, the military, and he owns Dead Reckoning, which was created by Simon Baker, the Australian actor in this, who you'll know from The Mentalist. The film also stars Asia Argento, which is the daughter of Dario Argento, who George was probably repaying the favour back for Dawn of the Dead, and having her cast in this, I'd have known her a long time anyway. The film also has a cameo appearance from Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright as zombies, and the zombies in this end up becoming a lot more cleverer, led by Big Daddy. This zombie here, see him on the back there, Big Daddy, who is sick of seeing all of his zombie friends being massacred and killed at the beginning. Well, what they're doing there, they're taking up supplies and everything like that at the start of the film, and from that some weapons are left behind, so they start to develop more of an intelligence and develop more vengeful feelings towards the humans, and they start taking the weapons, and they eventually start taking objects, you know, to smash into buildings, and to with cleavers, and they start cutting into wood and basically trying to get to Fiddler's Green. And they have to go through a river, and they have to go underwater and walk through it. All heard of them, that's a really cool scene, and they develop some kind of intelligence. There's a great cast in this one, and when you see the making of this, you can really tell that all the actors and everything really respect George Romero, and even though George Romero hates the Hollywood system, you can tell he had someone fun on this, because it has got that classic Romero aspect of it, but it's a long way from films like Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and even Night of the Living Dead. Tom Savini turns up again in this as a cameo, and he's back as the machete zombie who was in Dawn of the Dead. He turns up in a cameo in this, and K&B, Greg Nicotero, does the special effects in this. K&B, they do all the gory stuff, all the body parts and everything, and you can tell it's their work. And the soundtrack score is amazing. I find to this, it's got like guitars in it, it's got horns in there, it's really overblown and quite Hollywood like, the soundtrack is, and it's interesting to see that on a film like a George Romero film, which is like from an indie background and taking it to a Hollywood background, and this is the director's cut apparently. I couldn't tell the difference really. I don't know what extra scenes there are or anything like that, or extra gory scenes, maybe just extended gore. But on the Region 2 DVD, as well as the Region 1 DVD, you get loads of extra features like a making of Land of the Dead, A Day with the Living Dead, Bring the Dead to Life, When Sean Met George, the remaining bits, Bringing the Storyboards to Life, Scream Tests, Zombie Casting Call, Scenes of Carnage, Special Effects, Green Screen to the finished scene. Obviously got the feature itself, and it's got commentary by George Romero. So that's a lot to keep you occupied really. Like I said, it doesn't cut back on the gore or anything like that. There's some great gore effects in this from K&B Studios, and of course Greg Nicotero. The characters are quite memorable, and like a lot of them look like they had fun in this. And if you can see the back there, there's Dennis Hopper. No, he's not on the back there, sorry. Yes, this is Dennis Hopper. He was a great friend to George Romero anyway, and they both knew each other from the 60s and everything, from the Easy Rider days and stuff like that. But Night of the Living Dead came out first, I think, and on the behind the scenes on this, George and Dennis would talk about all past times and old times and get to know each other again and everything. And it's a shame that Dennis Hopper passed away like he did a couple of years ago, but Dennis Hopper's line in this, "Zombies, they creep me out," and I found the zombies quite creepy in this, and it's in widescreen, so you get to see everything. And George Romero makes good use of the scenes and the crowd scenes and long distance zombie scenes and Dead Reckoning when that's on the road and everything. It runs at about 92-93 minutes. It's a lot shorter than his other efforts like Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. But Land of the Dead, aka Dead Reckoning, as it was meant to be, is a fun film. It's worth checking out. The legendary filmmaker brings you his ultimate zombie masterpiece. I guess they've got to say that anyway, like if it's from a Hollywood studio. But for a Hollywood studio and George Romero, it's not a bad effort, and I think this is probably his last great effort compared to like Survival of the Dead and Diary of the Dead, which he did try with, I think, in my opinion, which came to follow some years later. This came out a year after like the Dawn of the Dead remake, so maybe it was the right time to actually do this film in the first place. But this came out in 2005. It's an 18. It's gory. It's in widescreen, and it is worth checking out. So if you can check out Land of the Dead, check it out. Also check out the soundtrack. It's a really good one as well, and I like the cast in this. It's a memorable cast and really fun one at that. That's George A. Romero's Land of the Dead. I also need to add on this that this film also stars a guy who plays a burn victim. Half his face is burned, and his name's Charlie in the film, and he's a bit of a crack shot, and he ends up being a good friend to Simon Baker in this. The film also stars John from Super Mario Brothers. Really cool. And I must admit, in this film, this is the first time I believe they call zombies walkers. So that's an interesting note to add there. But I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I'll see you again for another one. Hope you've enjoyed these. I've enjoyed doing these zombie reviews. we move on now to Diary of the Dead, George A. Romero's fifth, I believe, in his Dead series, and he goes back to his independent roots. And after Land of the Dead, which was part of a major Hollywood studio, he goes back to basically what he calls his independent phase, his favourite way of making movies. Diary of the Dead came out in 2007, 2008, and it's received a lot of mixed reactions, to be honest. For starters off, the film tries to be original in some ways because it's shot in like the first person's perspective of having two video cameras and taking it back to like the zombie outbreak as it first started. And there's a group of student filmmakers and their lecturer, and they're making a film called The Death of Death, which is supposed to be a horror film. And as this is all happening, there's news reels and stuff happening all over the internet and over the news that the zombie outbreak has basically started, and hospitals have got their victims, had like zombie victims that are turning into zombies, and basically the world's gone to shit again. And in the midst of this, they're in the middle of nowhere making this film and trying to make heads or tails out of it and trying to survive and uploading their footage to YouTube to try and get the truth out there, just to show the world what's going off. But it has its faults, because if it was the Angry Video Game Nerd pointed this out, but if it was a documented film, then it probably wouldn't have music like it does. So people could pick faults on it that way. It does have its gory moments, not massively gory or anything like that, but there are zombie bites, zombie kills. They're trying to figure out how to kill these zombies, and basically have to figure out by killing them, by shooting them in the head, and finding all kinds of different ways to kill them with like the lack of guns and everything. They also run into the military as well, and in the next film that's follow the survival of the dead, one of the characters of the military guys that they meet goes on to be a major actor in that next film. We also saw the military guy that you see a cameo in this also turn up in Land of the Dead as well, which I didn't mention. But the DVD itself has a lot of features. This limited edition tinned edition has lots of extra features. It has a director, editor and director of photography, cast interviews, Speak of the Dead, which is a highlights of George Romero's public speaking in Toronto. That's where he promoted this film. He also promoted it at Fright Fest 08. Feature length George A. Romero, Master of the Dead interview, and a foreword by the producers, in character profiles, celebrity voiceovers, which they do in this, as in like people like Tom Savini, I believe, and George Romero turns up as a cop or something. In character profiles, just mentioned that. Look at the Dead makeup featurette, a new spin-off The Dead, visual effects featurette, so it uses digital effects like a bit like in Land of the Dead, but you got more CGI blood in this. Photography and design featurette, shorts, the first week, and the roots. So there's quite a bit on there. Just show the back quickly, if you can see that properly. The tin version, I thought I'd just get this anyway. I just thought the tin looked nice and everything. But the film itself, I think it has got a commentary in there somewhere, but it kind of gets mixed up in the new format of doing things like, imagine the Blair Witch with zombies, basically. And that's what we get with Diary of the Dead. And the tagline is "Shoot the Dead," as in film them, and they do it with 2 cameras, and they've got very limited weapons, and they end up finding like a crossbow or something like that. The best characters in this, I think, some people might disagree, but I thought the Lecture was the best character in this. And people complain about the acting in this as well, and everybody goes on about the Amish guy in this as well. You'll see what I mean. Diary of the Dead, George A. Romero's return to independent horror. Check it out if you want to. Check it out at your own risk, but you've got to get onto Survival of the Dead, yeah, which I'll get to eventually and very shortly. Diary of the Dead by George A. Romero. Survival of the Dead, which came out in 2009/2010, was George A. Romero's last film of the 2000s and his last zombie film currently. This one has mixed reactions to it, and some people have called it amateurish. The CGI isn't up to par, the humour's hit and miss, and basically the story focuses on this guy here, who we saw briefly in Land of the Dead, this soldier guy in Land of the Dead, and in Diary of the Dead. It recaps the last film anyway, Diary of the Dead. And basically it's about 2 warring type families, rival Irish gangs type of thing, as one of them gets sent away across the board, as the other gang is left trying to find out alternative methods to try and control the dead. The soldier and his group get mixed up in all this, and they end up going to the island where there's a bit of chaos, more zombie action basically, and they have to take a boat there, and some of their survivors get infected by swimming underwater and biting off the zombies' fingers underwater, and end up getting infected themselves, and it ends up with very few survivors at the end of this, and Survival of the Dead basically. George Romero has moved on now. He said he's not doing any more zombie films at the minute, because in January in 2014 he's doing a Marvel comic called Empire of the Dead, which you should check out if you can support George Romero, of course. But the DVD itself doesn't really come with any extra features, which is a bit disappointing. It's from Optimum Releasing. The Region 1 version was 2 discs, I think, or at least it had more extra features on it, but the British version just doesn't really cut it with the extra features. Survival of the Dead, watch at your own risk. The 6th Dead film. But a lot of people say that they prefer the original trilogy of the Dead from 1968 to 1985, and they also say that Greg Nicotero again does the zombie effect in this, I believe, the practical effects, I believe he does anyway, and they say that Tom Savini was the last great collaboration that was to happen with George Romero and his special effects, like on Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead, and his zombie features basically. Survival of the Dead, watch at your own risk basically. There it is. Good night.